Hello, guys, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Master Your Mental podcast. Today, we are going to be getting into all things on getting out of a rut. If you've ever found yourself feeling stuck in one, then this is the perfect episode for you. I'm joined by my wonderful guest, Bobbie Caskey, today. Bobbie is a women's empowerment coach with a passion for helping women create a more intentional and authentic life. Before becoming a coach, Bobbie worked in the corporate world managing projects and conducting trainings for national clients. I'm so excited to have Bobbie here with us today to cover tips on this topic. So, without further ado, welcome Bobbie to the podcast.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for
Hey,
having me.
of course. I'm so excited to have you because you brought up this topic of getting out of a rut. And I was like, that's such a good one because that's something that I
Mhm.
haven't dove into yet on any of the episodes. And I know
Okay,
you have
yeah.
so many tips on this and so many techniques and strategies to help people in these moments when they're feeling like this and feeling stuck and all those things. So I'm excited to dive into this. But before we do, I would love if you could tell me about the biggest rut that you have ever found yourself in and how did you work to get out of it?
Oh my gosh, that's such a great question. I think that the biggest rut that I found myself in was probably at the end of my corporate career when I was in my business, in a corporate job that had served me really well. And I have so much gratitude for it. But I was just so burned out and so tired and getting sick all the time. And I started to not be passionate about my work anymore. I started to feel that pull towards something more purposeful, something else, but I didn't know what it was. And so I kept trying to just bury myself with other things, which was easy because I had two small kids and there was so much to it. I was trying to be perfect at my job, perfect at home with the kids. And I just started to get sick. So that when I think of my life, I'm like, that was the biggest deep rut because there were so many factors to it. Just
Mhm.
so many.
Wow. Yeah, just listening to you break that down, and especially when you talk about, having the corporate job and being there and
Yeah.
having that, and then especially having two kids on top of that, and then trying to transition and
Yeah.
kind of like not being sure, not knowing what's going on, not knowing entirely like the next steps to take. That is a huge challenge. And I know so many people can probably relate to that, listening or having had moments in their own lives where they were in similar situations, whether they're in some kind of a transition
Mhm.
kind of period where they're going from, whether it relates to like their career, relationships, or something that they're trying for the first time and they're not
Right.
really sure. And yeah, like all those emotions that come up. So for you, like what are the common emotions you see coming up when we find ourselves stuck in these ruts, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah. Well, I think that's such a good question. I think there's a lot of overwhelm that
Mhm.
happens because I think just what you just touched on, like we're all so busy, especially working moms. I mean, or working women, there's so much going on that what I hear a lot of women say is, I don't have time to think about a transition. I don't even have time to do that. Right. So, there's overwhelm. And then what happens is it kind of becomes like this vicious circle where then you feel kind of bad about yourself, like because you're not taking steps. And so for me, like really what changed for me is, and not to sound like I'm pitching myself in any way, but like I got a life coach. Like I got a coach, and more to the point, I learned about like what my mind was doing. And that's what changed everything for me. I
Wow.
started to learn like
Mhm.
it wasn't a permanent personality defect to me, why I was stuck and why I was so tired and not doing what I thought was a good enough job and just not making any strides. I realized that it wasn't permanent. And that's something I'm really passionate about talking about because somewhere along the line, like, when you're a kid and you think, we all instinctually know that failure's no biggie deal. It's like learning, right? Like you take steps, you fall, you just do everything and you mess up and you keep trying to learn and you keep going. And then at least I can just talk for me and the clients I work with. It's like something changes when we get to be an adult, where at least I started to believe that failure just wasn't an option anymore. That it was some reflection of my permanent personality, who I was. And so if I failed, that means that was who I was. And I think this is all happening at such like a subliminal deep love, kind of level. It's tricky, right? So we don't really know that that's what's going on, but a lot of what I see is that.
Wow. And that really makes me think of, like you said, the point of internalizing that when it comes to failure, right? And taking it as I'm a failure, and not
Right.
like if you messed up at something or it didn't go the way that you had planned, instead of seeing it as this and okay, how can I, try again, or what can I do to move forward,
Yeah,
or, the
exactly.
solutions, you're taking
Mhm.
that as, oh, like this is like a character trait of me.
It means
And
something about me. It permanently.
yeah.
Like I talk to so many people that have a passion project. They want to start a blog, they want to start a book, they want to change their careers a little bit, and they feel so stuck
Mhm.
because, first of all, it means a lot to them. And the more it means to us, the more resistance that we're going to feel, because we think, okay, I'm going to post this blog, and if it doesn't go anywhere, that means I'm never going to get what I want. It means some kind of permanent flaw about me. So to me, that was the single biggest game changer, was seeing, okay, that's what my brain was saying, because our brain's going to put out all this information to us. And then our true selves, we get to decide, if we're aware of it, then we get to decide if we want to believe it or not. But when we're
Yes.
not aware of it, we're just like, it's just the brain's going on default, and you're just you're subconsciously believing it. I don't think I would have
Mhm.
said those words, well, if I fail, I'm gonna, it's permanent. But I knew that I would feel so bad if I failed. And I knew that my inner critic would just go crazy if I failed. So I just stayed put. I made living under the radar a life form, an art form. I mean, I made it because I just didn't want to risk it. And I feel like that's at the heart. Like, we think it's because we're so busy. And I want to be clear, I get busy, like 2 kids, house, dog. It's true. There's no making that up. But I really feel like our circumstances can be worked out. It's this inner pull, this inner resistance that really keeps us in a rut, like just
Wow.
in place. And I want to
Yes.
normalize that. That's what I
Oh.
want my message to be like. This is so normal. I mean, this is sort of how we're set up to be, because we get to a certain age and our fear-based mind is like, nope, 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 stay in your comfort zone. I don't want you to go out. And I can talk more about that. I don't know if I'm getting in the weeds, but
Yeah, no,
there's so much
I
going on that we haven't learned about our
yes. Oh my
mind.
gosh. That's
I
so
know you
true.
talk about that. I know you talk about that a lot
Yes,
here.
that's so true. I love that you bring that up, because especially when you talk about like this, almost like we have these survival brains, right? Like
Yeah,
I was hearing somewhere where, your brains were initially like to keep you safe back in like prehistoric times,
that's
like don't go
exactly it.
here. So, and it's still like that kind of a system set up. So when we're faced with something, like you said, it's inside of us that's holding
Right.
us back because of that inner critic and those voices of, like, you're safe here,
Right.
this is safe. Like, what are you doing? Like, that's crazy. Like, stay there. Like, and then
Yeah.
you end up, like you said, overwhelm, having that aspect of being
Mhm.
overwhelmed. And then also the thing too of time, of feeling like I don't
Right.
have the time to, make it out of this. And especially when you find yourself in a rut, it can get so easy to continue to like dig yourself deeper, because it's
Right.
almost like being familiar with that feeling already. And then almost like, oh, like what is it going to be to actually do
Yeah.
this
How do
thing?
I even start? Overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And so I'll touch on that because it's like the overwhelm is also, even though we all have so much going on and that's real, overwhelm is a strategy of that part of the brain that you mentioned, the part that wants to keep us safe. And it'll usually say something like, Why bother? Why take one step? It's not going to do anything. Like what happens to me all the time is, why do this workout today? You can't do it tomorrow. Like, that kind of like, why even bother taking a step? It's
Mm-hmm.
all part of that inner resistance. And we have that inner critic that I wanted to talk about. That's just like the I'm not enough, that kind of goes, that is universal, but we don't, at least I never heard that it was. So when I would hear like that talk track, that narration about me not being enough, I just believed it was true. I believed it was true because I thought, like, so subconsciously I thought, okay, this is the voice in my head. It knows me better than anyone. And if it's saying I'm not enough, well, I mustn't be. And then think about it. If you've got that going on, and then you think failure is a reflection, then see, the failure can reinforce it.
Mm,
You know what I mean? Because then it
yeah.
makes it true. So it's so scary. That's what it was for me. It was like, I'm going to make that voice true. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what I think is happening behind the scenes. And that's why there's so much resistance, but we don't understand it. And then we make it mean something about us, that we're stuck, and that adds to it. So it is really so easy to get stuck. I get stuck all the time in my
Mm-hmm.
life. And I know all this, but I know how to
Yeah.
get out of it.
And I love how you bring that up of just having the role of the voice in being
Yeah.
stuck, and in our voice telling us these things, and then sometimes not even having an awareness of it, right? Because it's so, and sometimes not even
Mhm.
having an awareness of all the thoughts that we have on a daily basis. If we're having
Right.
like how many thoughts we have a day, right? And not being able to like consciously be aware of, okay, I'm thinking this right here, right now, in this moment, and I believe this about myself. I believe that
Yeah.
I'm not good enough to do this, or I don't know what I'm doing, or I'm going to mess up, or people
Mhm.
are going to, think I'm crazy or whatever, that's going to go
Yeah.
on. And that's what keeps you feeling like you need to stay here. And it's sad because, sometimes that is what stops a lot of people from pursuing their passions and really what they want to do, because it
Right.
is it is scary. It's not like you snap your fingers and boom, like go for it, great, like you did it. It's gonna
Yeah.
be a scary thing because it's new. You never done this, you never stepped into this zone before, you're pushing your limits, you're leaving your comfort zone, and
Mhm.
that is where you grow. But then when it comes to that place of being stuck in this rut of, oh man, like you were talking about with your corporate career, like being in that
Mhm.
and then finding yourself getting so tired and sick
Right.
often and just feeling drained and burnt out, and then kind of accepting that is like normal almost, and kind of just saying, okay, like I'm going to
Yeah.
continue, just, this is how it is, just
Yeah.
do this and that. Wow. When you catch yourself in that, and then you actually catch yourself doing that, then I think is that kind of the first step of getting out of a rut like that, is just gaining the awareness of, this is how I'm feeling, and wow, like this sucks. Or
Yeah.
like, what would you say is like the first step of really working to come out of that?
Yeah. Well, first, it's like, I hope, just anyone listening is like, just first to be like self-compassionate and
Mm,
think about, like, you could even write down. Sometimes I have my clients just write down everything they expect of themselves in a day, you know, and it's
that's
like,
powerful. Yeah.
I mean, you could do that. You could just take a piece of paper and write down everything that, it's like, be great at my job, give a great presentation, have a healthy meal, work out, be present with my kids. I mean, it goes on and on. It's what we're doing is so much, and we have such high expectations. So I think the first step is just to realize that and give yourself a little compassion and grace for how much you're already doing and how
Hmm.
much you've already done, you know?
Wow. Yeah,
And
that's a huge piece. I love that you bring the self-compassion into it, because that
Mhm.
can seem, and I relate to that a lot, because I know I used to not have that at
Me
all.
either.
And it's yeah, it's like you have to teach yourself. And it is kind of wild when you think about it. Like, you have to teach yourself how to love yourself. It's like, whoa, it's like, why don't you already love yourself? Why do you have to teach? And that's it's is so
Right.
wild, when, because when you catch yourself in these moments, you usually aren't being kind to yourself, right? When you catch yourself in a rut and you're like
Yeah,
having this cycle of thoughts, like, oh man, I didn't get my checklist done today. I was supposed to get this off
yeah,
my to-do list. I didn't do it. Okay, well, maybe tomorrow. And then you don't do it again. And then you start to tell yourself, like, oh, like
right.
I'm so far behind. I'm not getting things done. And then it just starts to snowball and spiral. And
It
then you're
really
like, you take a
does.
step back and you're like, you're being so like hard on yourself because we don't do that to others. That's what I learned is would you
Exactly. Oh
treat,
my
and that's
gosh.
that's what every conversation, I love these conversations because being able to speak to such awesome people like you and have you come on here and talk about this because you've seen it too, right? You've seen that
Hmm.
like how,
Oh,
yeah.
I was terrible to myself. I mean,
Mhm.
that's one of the things, my coach asked me, like, would you say that to a friend?
Mhm.
Like the things I was saying about myself. Would you expect that of a friend? And I was like, no. Isn't
Mhm.
it great? Like, but we don't know what's happening, and we don't. So without the awareness, it can be really, really difficult to push through
Mhm.
a rut. Um, but I think one thing that I ask my clients to do is I ask them to start to gain an awareness of how much they're already doing,
Mm.
right? And then start to think about, like, okay, when am I feeling the worst? Like, what emotion, like when I'm feeling my lowest, like stressed or whatever, ask yourself, like, okay, what thought, like try to figure out what your brain's telling you. Is it that you're not doing enough? Like, try to start to figure out what that talk track is so you can spot it. And what that does is it puts a tiny little bit of space between you and this talk track so that you can
Wow.
be empowered to see what's occurring, because our minds regularly distort reality, is the truth. They
Mhm.
tell us all the time when something's going awful is going to happen, and it doesn't. But we still, it's hard because it feels like us. But when you can start to gain a little bit of distance, a tiny bit, and start to be like, okay, this is what it's putting out. The brain's going to put out thoughts, like the heart pumps blood, lungs pump air, brain's going to put out thoughts. Which ones do you want to put energy to? Because
Mhm.
that's going to determine your actions, and you need the actions to get out of a rut.
Wow. I'm sitting here, you guys, right now, writing this down. I'm like taking notes right now because this is so good, especially like what you just said, spot the talk track. So spotting
Mhm.
that. So having awareness of, okay, this is what I'm telling myself that is hurting me. Or when you have these thoughts, how does it make you feel? Does that make you feel good? Does it make you feel bad? And then when you feel bad, what are those thoughts? So spotting that is
Right.
huge. Love
It's
that. I love that
huge.
you said that. And
It's
then which
huge.
ones, yeah, huge. And then also which ones, like you said, you're putting energy to or you're giving the most attention to, right?
Yeah.
That, yeah. Oh my
This is
gosh.
what's so empowering. This is why I love my work so much, because here's the deal. It's science. A lot of this is science, right? Like, if the mind's going to pump out thoughts, and even if I think it's true, even if I think like I haven't done enough today, even if I think that's true, there's a bunch of other ways for me to think about it, right?
Hmm.
But if I latch onto that one, and the brain, if I think that thought a lot, my brain's going to default to it. So it's going to offer it first. I'm not getting enough done. I'm not getting enough done. Well, if the energy goes there, our thoughts directly affect our emotions. If we put our energy on that thought, I'm not getting enough done, the corresponding emotion is usually frustration, helplessness, anxiety. That kind of emotion, which is energy in motion, that's what emotions are, that kind of
Hmm.
energy will not result in you getting anything done. A trick that well, not a trick, but what I kind of recommend my clients doing as a start, and something I can offer here, is instead of that, which creates a lot of drama, I'm not doing enough, I'm not being productive enough, I haven't made any progress, just know that your brain's going to put that out. And if you decide if you want to be productive, you can just try to let those go. Be like, that's just my brain. All brains do this. And you could say something like, I'm going to give myself 20 minutes and see what I can do and
Hmm.
see what I can get done.
Wow. I love that the way you just laid that out of instead of going directly to I didn't do this, or this, like the
Yeah,
list, right, of things that you didn't do or that you should be doing or that you didn't do right, or that, like all these
right.
things that are over here that you're giving this attention to. But instead, if you're saying, okay, I'm going to give myself, like you said,
Mhm.
20
I'm
minutes
giving myself 20 minutes
to
to just
do
see.
this, and especially like that just all goes back to, that point you made of, what do you want to give your attention to, or your
Mhm.
which emotions or feelings are you paying attention to the most, are you giving the
Right,
most attention to? So, and like you said, when you have these emotions that come up, of the thought patterns, and that's an important one too, is these thought patterns that reoccur on a daily basis, of where you say, oh man, like
yeah,
yeah, and it's like, what is that doing to your mental health, or like how is that
right,
impacting you in terms of experiencing, depression or anxiety or feeling down? And like you said, when you're in that kind of a zone, it's really hard to be productive and get
right,
things
because
done, because
yeah,
you're dwelling and you're basically fighting an inner battle with yourself, with your
exactly,
mind, with your thoughts, trying to come out of that. But then when you can flip that and say, okay, I'm feeling this right now. I'm feeling this right now. I'm thinking about myself this way, but why? Like what can I do differently to shift this, to move towards where I want to go? And I think that's such a beautiful thing, because when you finally feel like you are in control, because a lot of it I feel like is feeling helpless, out of control.
yeah,
You have no control here, no power here. But then when you start to give yourself that back and say,
yep.
I can control this, and I'm proud of myself. Like you said, celebrating the things that you've already accomplished
Oh
and
my gosh.
have already done. And then,
Yeah.
right, like you said, I love how you talk about lists too, and writing things down and doing that, because I know that helps. I'm very visual, and I know a lot of people probably are too as
Me
well,
too.
like to have those lists and things, and to really see that on paper and say, wow, like look at all of the things that I've accomplished or I've done, or these experiences, and to really give attention to that, and then let that
Yeah,
magnify, instead of, well, I didn't, clean the kitchen today,
right.
or this, and oh
Right,
man.
exactly. It's being
Yeah.
strategic, and that's where the empowerment piece comes in.
Hmm.
Because if you're strategic with where you put the energy to your thoughts, then you're strategic about where your mental energy goes. Because look, we all have so much to do, but one way that you can have more energy without, like, I mean, going to the gym is important, eating healthy is important, all that stuff, but there is a way through managing your mind to have so much more energy in a day. Because when we latch onto the negative thoughts, which is our natural thing to do, our brain's going to put them out. I'm sure you've studied, like, I think more than half, 50% of the thoughts our brain puts out is negative. So it's
Wow.
like, it's
Yeah.
not our fault. It's nobody's fault, right? We're
Mhm.
going to, and we also think, this is a point I wanted to make. I used to think, and a lot of my clients think, that we need those kind of negative thoughts to keep us motivated. Like, I'm not doing enough, like being hard on ourselves.
Mhm.
Like, I used to think I needed that in order to get stuff done, but it's counterproductive. So you not only feel like crap, but all that negative energy actually blocks you. So when I can show my clients that, then it's like, it's kind of like a breakthrough, because it's like, I'm just beating myself up because I think I need to, but it's actually hurting. It's hurting my feelings, and it's hurting my productivity.
Wow. Yeah. I love that, because once you start to realize that, and then have these realizations, that really opens the door for just being able to continue to pour into yourself more, instead
Mhm.
of, pulling things out of yourself, like, well, I didn't do this, or I need to give my attention, like being a mother, or being busy with different things that you
Mhm.
have to do, and you feel an obligation that you
Right.
aren't able to make time for you or do that. And that's the thing, is when
Right.
you start to say, you know what, you are, and you can, and here's how to do it. And like, here's let's do it together, an easy process. And that's why I think it's so important what you're doing, is walking people through this
Mhm.
and helping them realize these things, because sometimes it takes another person seeing it in us that we don't see it in us, but other people
Totally.
can help us pull that out and say, you do this, or, do you have an awareness of that? And that helps so much in just being able to grow, because when you have someone say, point out something about how you are or how you behave or respond, and you're like, oh, I never knew that about myself, or
Yeah,
I
I never
never,
knew that I was thinking
yeah,
that, or that I was,
yeah.
that's really part, like, I would have never gotten this without talking to somebody,
Hmm.
because kind of it's like, if you work with a coach, they kind of show you your brain, and then you get to be like, oh, like, I don't really believe that, because, then it goes back to, there's so much we learn as a kid, all love
Hmm.
to our parents and caretakers, but we learn so many thoughts and beliefs as a kid, like before we're 5. I think they say that half of your core beliefs are determined before 5. So it's really
Wow.
good to know what those are. Not that they're bad or wrong or our parents did anything wrong, but it's part of that empowerment. Like, what am I working from? And do I
Hmm.
still, as an adult, want to be working from that? It's
Oh,
so powerful and it's so doable. Like, once you've got the information, then you can work with it and you can figure out strategies. But which is why I'm so passionate about this, because I was walking around for 40 years just having no clue about this. And
hmm.
I don't know. That's what I think
Wow.
is
No,
really,
I love it. I love it so much. And I think it's so important and so necessary to, have those situations and those moments of realization and going through that. And, this brings me to the question I always love to ask everybody. This is like my favorite question. And the
okay.
last question I always love to ask every single person, because everyone has such a different answer, but it's so beautiful what people say. So I would love to ask you, Bobbie, what are you currently doing in this moment to master your mental?
Oh my gosh. That is such a good question. I'm a little nervous now.
No, don't be. Don't be.
Yeah. Well, I am just, because I'm trained in it. I'm just constantly, like, when I start to feel low, and sometimes we have to feel, sometimes feeling low, that's why we've got those feelings. But I really ask myself, okay, what am I telling? Like, what's my brain telling me? Right. And the other thing I do is I dance, like I dance to,
Yes.
like, any song that inspires me, honestly, because energy is so contagious. That's an easy way to, like, that's one way that I use to really, like, lift myself up. I do. I listen to a song and I dance a little and I feel better. And I just remind myself of everything that I've been able to do in my life. And I realized that there's going to be dips. I think that's the one thing, the biggest thing I would say is that I've realized that there's going to be dips. It doesn't mean you can't move forward. That's how
Hmm.
I manage it. Like, I'll have a
Oh,
day where things don't go right. And my old self would have been like, that's it. It's a sign. I'm never going to do it. These
hmm.
extremes. And I'm trying to live more in the softer lines, that, okay,
Oh,
this didn't go well, but what did I learn? I think
hmm.
that's the number one thing, is I've just really changed how I view setbacks.
Wow, that's amazing. And that is so powerful, because like you said, your old self would have responded so differently and been
Shut it
like,
down.
that's it. But the fact that you've done so much of this work and the work to help others as well, that you're able to do this and say, okay, to realize these dips and these transitions and to continue to progress and
Mhm.
move forward, instead of saying, okay, I'm done. Like, I'm just gonna like
That's it. Shut it down. It's
completely
too
done.
risky. I don't want to feel like this anymore. I don't want people judging.
Yeah.
I would have shut it down.
Yeah, and wow, that's a good one. I love that so much, because we could all learn from that. We could all learn from that, of having these moments in our lives where we feel so stuck and so trapped, but then being able to pour into ourselves and give us our own selves the support that we need from ourselves. So I love that. And I loved talking to you. You brought so many great tips to the table. I have my notepad right here,
Awesome.
took some notes. I'm going to share this with everybody. You guys, Bobbie is amazing. I'm so happy you gave me the time today to come out here on Master Your Mental and share this with me, share a little bit about your story, your journey, and the transition from, being stuck in these ruts, in these moments,
Mhm.
and then coming out of that place, and the steps that we can take to empower ourselves and uplift ourselves and really do the work to come out of those places. So, you know what? Like, just thank you so much for coming out and getting into this conversation with me. Really
Thank
loved it.
you.
And it was awesome.
I love what you're doing too. Thank you so, so much for having me. It was awesome. Thank you.
Yay. Oh my gosh. Can't wait to release this one. And you guys, whether you are listening during the daytime or during the nighttime, I want to say goodbye to you guys. And on that note, I'm going to end it and say bye to Bobbie as well. So bye, Bobbie. Thanks for coming on.
Bye. Thanks
Bye.
again. Bye, everybody.